Now, I would like to welcome you all to the 2019 Marty Scholars My Last Lecture Award. If you're sitting here today, you probably have the slightest clue about what this ceremony is about, but allow me to remind you of the context. Last week, the Vice President's Committee of the Alumni Scholars Club hosted a Profess Your Appreciation, if you like that pun, note-making event on Bruin Walk for Teacher Appreciation Day, and later consolidated the notes from the student body into personalized letters to mail out to each respective professor. And this week of heartwarming events have led up to tonight's main attraction. So why does it feel so special to be here tonight? Why is there such an incredible atmosphere in this room today? Well, what would you say if this were your last lecture on Earth? The Marty Scholars My Last Lecture Award is the largest student-nominated faculty award on UCLA's campus, established to honor UCLA professors who inspire their students the most. This long-standing Bruin tradition, in fact, was inspired by Randy Pausch's best-selling book, The Last Lecture. And for over 50 years, student-nominated UCLA professors have been given the opportunity to consolidate all of their life lessons and advice into a hypothetical last lecture. And this year's award sets a historical precedent. Does anybody in the crowd know why? Yes, I'm incredibly honored to announce this year's speaker, Professor Barbara Demman, as the first female recipient of the Marty Scholars My Last Lecture. And this year's theme, is Precious Human Life. Now, a little bit more about the woman of the hour. Barbara Demman is a board-certified acute care nurse practitioner and a clinical nurse specialist. Her 20 years of nursing clinical experience has ranged from large urban teaching hospitals to small community international centers. She currently serves as a lecturer at the UCLA School of Nursing, a nurse practitioner for the Companion Hospice, and an educator for Kaplan Incorporated. Moreover, Barbara's passion for global health has paved the way for international nursing initiatives spanning from the Caribbean to Africa to Southeast Asia. Her recent works include the Ghana Emergency Medical Collaborative, which implemented the first ever nursing certification program in the country of Ghana. In addition, Barbara is determined to reduce burnout symptoms and compassion fatigue among healthcare providers through mindfulness-based initiatives. After experiencing a burnout of her own in 2008, she sharpened her focus around health promotion and wellness throughout the nursing field. As a result, Barbara completed a year-long fellowship at the UCLA Mindfulness Awareness Research Center and designed a 6-week course called SHARP, that is Stress in Healthcare, Awareness, Reduction, and Prevention, with her husband, an ER physician. Out of all these things, Barbara finds the most fulfillment from working with her nursing students. She finds them to be diligent, eager to learn, and incredibly passionate. Her favorite quote by UCLA's esteemed coach John Wooden is the following: "No written word, no spoken plea can teach the students what they should be, nor all the books on all the shelves. It's what the teachers are themselves." Professor Demman does her absolute best to live up to this message. In her spare time, Barbara enjoys spending time with her husband and their daughter, Rocky, as well as tap dancing. Happy Mother's Day, by the way. And finally, she extends her gratitude to all of her friends, family, and colleagues for all of their love and support. Now, without further ado, let's give it up for the incredible and amazing Professor Barbara Demman.
How's this working? Can you guys hear me back there? What about back there? Yeah? What about back there? Guys awake? Okay, great. Good job. All right. Okay. Thank you. First, thank you so much to the Alumni Association of UCLA. This is incredible. Julie, thank you. George, thank you. Will, where are you? Thank you. Megan, is she here? I haven't seen her yet. Thank her, yeah. It's really incredible. Oh, and Tasia, too. Tasia, you're somewhere. Thank you. These are all people that I've been emailing frequently over the past month, and I've never met them face to face. So today we met, and it was like really nice, to meet you. So Thank you for all your work, and the main contact person has been Will Cho, and Julie introduced you as a leader, Will, and indeed you are. You are professional, prompt in all your replies, and also at the same time encouraging, so thank you. The next thank you is that I would like to thank the UCLA family. I see so many of you here. And actually, Kathy Gapster was the first person that I taught with, and she said, you can do this. This is back in like 2000 and something. And I just really want to thank the UCLA family, especially Dean Sarna and the School of Nursing, and all my colleagues. Thank you for the professionalism, the mentorship, because I was a student at UCLA, and all of a sudden things switched, and suddenly my professors became colleagues. And that was very interesting for me, and I felt so welcomed. And now I'm at the point where I have students of the past who are now my colleagues that I'm teaching with, some of them. So that is a real honor to do. I feel very fortunate and privileged and very united in our love of UCLA, but also love of nursing. I feel so honored to be at UCLA Medical Center, where nursing is so strong, at UCLA School of Nursing, where nursing is so strong. Whether it's through our excellent patient practice, our research, our policy creation, activism, advocacy, whatever it is, I feel honored to work with you, and I feel honored to teach nursing students how to be the best nurse possible. We can do it. We do it here. So now, thank you to the students, present and past. Seriously. And really, this is all your fault that this is happening right now. So, but it is truly working with nursing students is one of my favorite things of life. Being in your education is an honor, and really, nursing students are there to learn, eager to learn, eager to please, and want to be of service, and are at lectures, and attend and want to do well. And I mean, just it's such a privilege to work with you guys and teach. So thank you to the students. So next thank you is to my family in the front row here. I'm the youngest of 6 kids. And at one point, my mom and dad had 5 children under the age of 6. Yeah. Okay, I have one 10-month-old at home. I don't know how you did this. So I want to thank my family for being here, for encouraging me, for understanding me when maybe I didn't follow a usual path. And I just want to thank my mom and dad too for all the support throughout the years. I also want to say thank you and happy birthday to my nephew, Peter. Happy birthday. Do you want to give a speech? I'm just kidding. Yeah. Okay. And friends of all walks of life. There's one. Just kidding. And there are friends from grade school here. There are friends from high school here. There are friends from university. There are friends from the medical center. There are friends from the art collective I'm in. There are friends from Burning Man. There are friends from the dancing world. There are friends from all over here. And I really want to thank my friends for one thing in particular. I can be very scientific and very efficient to a fault. And if it wasn't for my friends for encouraging my creative and silly side, I would be really out of balance. So I want to thank them for that, for sure. So thank you to my friends and for being here right now. Special thanks to Sarah B., Sage, Jen Ryan, Trey Watkins, and Jason Bowers for helping me in the development of this topic and presentation. And very special thanks to my husband. He's right here in the middle. Thank you. I remember the first day I fell in love with you. Very grateful. I tried to hide it. It didn't work. And I just want to thank you for helping me and supporting me in achieving my dreams. And life is easier with you. Life is better with you. Thank you. And when you asked me to marry you, I said 1,000 times yes. And again, 1,000 times yes, over and over to you. So, okay. That's it for the thank yous. Are you guys still awake? Okay, great. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so when I first got news about winning this award, I don't know if you guys are in this life, but do you get so many emails that you're just like, I don't even know what this email is, and you kind of close it, and then you go back to it later? So I was in there, and I was like, you won this award. And I was like, I don't know what that means. And I just kind of closed it and went back, okay? And then that night, I opened this email, and it said, you won this award, and you were nominated by students, and it's the Marty Scholar. And I go, what is this? And so I looked up Marty Scholar, and this incredible man, completely encouraging, innovative, creative. I watched a bunch of his videos. He's an amazing person. And then I texted one of my friends who's in the business. I was like, do you know Marty Scholar? She's like, how did you not know him, you know? And it's like, oh my gosh, you know, so it was really inspiring watching, and I started watching all of the last lectures. And then I read the book by Randy Pausch, the last lecture, and it just became so honored and completely inspired and humbled too. And that the fact that this is a student voted award means so much to me. You know, it's a student voted award, so I really appreciate that. And then upon winning the award, I realized, okay, now you have to give a lecture. I was like, oh God, okay. And the only guidelines really provided were, you know, talk about anything that you want, but can you make it interesting, and can you make it engaging, and try to make it about something you normally wouldn't lecture on. So I have done many lectures before. I usually have some type of curricular base and objectives to achieve, and then we know where we're going with the path, but this was very much a blank page. And it's like, what do I talk about? Oh my gosh, what does everybody relate to? Not just nursing students who are my usual lecture victims, right? Okay, what would all people find interesting? What would all people find intriguing? What do we all have in common, right? Because this was going to be a lecture to many people. So it was a new task to me. It was this blank page, right? You know, what to do. So I started to think about, what do I have experience with? What could I talk about? What do I have familiarity with? And what could be helpful to many people? And I started to reflect about my life and my experiences and what I do. And I kept feeling this calling to talk about something that might be a little taboo, a topic that's taboo in our culture, and maybe even provocative. And the reason why is because what I do for a living and what my job is I am a hospice nurse practitioner. Now, first of all, most people don't even really know what a nurse practitioner is, and then most people don't even know what hospice is. So when I say what I do, most people are like, oh, and just kind of do that, you know, which is fine. And as nurses, we're used to that. Usually when you say you're a nurse, people are like, oh, that's so great. You know, very rarely does anyone say, oh, what kind of a nurse are you? And if they do say that, you're like, oh, are you a nurse too? You know, so it's interesting. So I'm a hospice nurse practitioner, and I work with people who have a terminal diagnosis. They have some type of diagnosis, disease that they've been diagnosed with, that the prognosis for them is to live about 6 months if the disease runs its normal course. So my job, technically, is to work with people who are dying and provide care for them in whatever way that may present itself. So it's interesting because, you know, I felt really compelled to talk about death and dying, which might not be a normal topic to talk about. And it's interesting too, when I tell people that I am a hospice nurse, the reactions are threefold. I used to work in ER. I used to work the emergency room for 8 years, and then I flipped the switch and went to the other end. And when I used to tell people I worked in the emergency room, the common response was, no way, that's so crazy. What's the craziest thing you've seen? Tell me what's the craziest thing you've seen. And then you have to think through the stories, and then you kind of tell them what they want, you know, these type of things. But, you know, when I tell people that I work with hospice, there's kind of 4 reactions. One is, oh, okay, that's great, and that means they don't know what it is and aren't interested in knowing, and that's okay too. Or, you know, some people may ask, hospice, what's that? And I can explain that. You know, I work with people who have a terminal disease and are dying or have a prognosis of 6 months or less. A lot of times people say, whoa, I could never do that, no. And people become speechless, almost as if they can't even talk about it, which is surprising to me because I would think ER would scare more people, but it's not. What scares more people is death and dying and being a hospice nurse. And then there's the fourth reaction, which is very, very, very rare. But a few people will say, "You're a hospice nurse? No way. Tell me everything. Tell me everything. What is that like?" And usually that has clued me in that that person has had some experience or exposure to death. They have had a loved one die, or they have been around there, or possibly even an experience themselves. And so often when they say that, I go, "Oh, have you had a loved one die to you?" And they go, "Yes." And they tell me an incredible story about how their loved one was on hospice service or something like that. So I find it interesting that there's a small collective of people that are very interested in hearing about it, and usually they've had an exposure to death or experience. Because you see, having exposure to death or familiarity with death, one way or another decreases some of the unknownness about death or the fear that's associated with, because there's a lot of fear surrounding it. So I thought, what could I speak to? So I thought, let's talk about death and dying. Okay. And why are some of the compelling reasons? Well, one, I have some familiarity with it. Two, it's guaranteed to occur. Cannot escape it. Okay? Another reason, it happens to all beings, okay? And you know what else? It's really not talked about in our society, and it's really not discussed. It's really not discussed. Death and dying is kind of a taboo topic. It's not what we talk about around the dinner table. And in a way, sometimes it's something hidden, and people don't want to discuss about it. It's not a lot of topics of a lot of things. It's not very public. Most parents don't talk about death to their children. Schools have a lot of sex education, but nothing about end of life. Many families, even when someone dies, there's always this question about should we tell some people, should we tell some families, and they often discourage certain people or children from attending funerals, kind of just saying, well, this person deceased, maybe they went away, or sometimes some families don't tell, college or people who are traveling because they're afraid that telling this news will impede their success or, be very upsetting or disrupt studies. So, as a culture where advanced age and the advanced age of wisdom is kind of hidden, it's not really in media or public, there's not many rituals around our elders, there's not really a place for them, sometimes as if they might remind us of mortality or death or our death. And even in the medical world, I find it really interesting that in the nursing education and the medical education, there's minimal talk about end of life. The typical course for a medical student or a nursing student is to get like a 3-hour theory lecture on death and dying, right? And then, it's not really encouraged to have any clinical experience with those at end of life. You must do pediatrics, you must do obstetrics rotation, you need to do a general medical surgical rotation, these type of things. But end of life, don't need any experience with, even though we know all people and all patients are going to have an end of life. So it's just very interesting to me that that's kind of how it goes. In another way too, in a death-adverse society a little bit, with providers not having any training, no wonder so many healthcare providers find it really difficult to engage in end-of-life discussions, right? It'd be really difficult. And how to facilitate people having a peaceful death. We haven't been trained. And also, there's another little current that in the medical world, death sometimes equates to failure. Maybe we didn't do enough. Maybe we could have done something else. Maybe we didn't see something. And this has a huge implication on healthcare providers. If death is seen as an event that we don't want to occur, then when it happens, it's almost like a failure for you. And I think a lot of this contributes to burnout in providers and these type of things. And also, it kind of implies that healthcare providers don't have anything to give to dying patients, which is absolutely the opposite, okay? A healthcare provider that can communicate clearly and effectively with patients who are dying and their families can create incredible opportunities for a peaceful death. Whereas others who cannot communicate clearly, we have suboptimal outcomes. So with all this, perhaps I took the last lecture way too literally, but I've kind of decided for the basis of my last lecture is that I'm going to talk about death and dying, and I understand that this may be very emotional, and that's okay, and we can all be here together with it, okay? And I'm here to support too and create safe space as much as I can. So let's talk about death, yeah? Now, interestingly, Jerry Seinfeld has a quote, and he says, according to most studies, people's number one fear is public speaking, and number two is death. Death is number two. Does that sound right? This means to the average person, if you go to the funeral, you're better off in the casket than doing the eulogy, right? So I realized that I am going to do public fear number one while talking about public fear number two, okay? So here we go, okay. Oh, also real quick, I just want to say that I am really talking about deaths of someone who receives a terminal diagnosis and has time before they die. I'm not talking about traumatic death or acute death or rapid death, so just want to kind of put that out there. Okay, so here's some areas I would like to discuss. As a hospice nurse practitioner, some observations of death, just some things I've seen. We'll talk about how to talk to someone who is dying, how to be with someone who is dying, and what does death teach us about living, okay? All right, so first and foremost, observations of death. I have seen that death is more than a physical event. Death is more than a physical event. Also, it's an individual and personal journey. So let me talk about these. Death is more than a physical event. We can read about it, it can be documented, but when I, as a nurse, have been at the bedside of people dying or with people and with their families through the process of getting to death and dying, there are some universal things I've seen that can be mysterious and somewhat unusual. And they have been documented in many areas universally throughout the world. And many people think that as one nears death, that there is a lot of agitation and restlessness. But in general, the opposite is true. Most people begin to sleep quite a bit, okay? And they sleep more hours of the day. And then eventually they'll get to sleeping about 23 hours a day with maybe just an hour of brief periods of wakefulness here and there, kind of in a deep consciousness. And during these brief wakeful periods, oftentimes patients start to say words and communicate ideas. And to the average person, these words and the meaning of the words are very confusing. And what these words often are is about traveling, which is very interesting. Many patients will say, it's time to get in line, it's time to get packed up for the trip, it's time to get dressed up real nice. I had one patient that kept saying, I gotta put on my tuxedo. I gotta put on my tuxedo, okay? What else? Boats leaving, trains leaving. One patient kept saying, trains leaving, okay? And it's interesting because there's a lot of travel and journey conversations. And loved ones and families sometimes can think, oh, they're just delirious, or they're confused, or this is a side effect of the medications, right? These type of things. But you know, not all people, but many, many people have these types of words about traveling and being on a journey. And what it looks like is that a lot of dying people are starting to prepare or have a preparation for their death. And surprisingly, often this knowledge within the patient is not faced with fear or panic, but a quiet, dignified resignation. And we call this phenomenon nearing death awareness. Nearing death awareness. And there's many aspects to nearing death awareness, but this is one that I've seen in many patients, the travel journey, the travel talk. Another type of nearing death awareness are visions. Many people who are dying see visions or see things, and often these tend to be, what happens is the patients often are sitting and they kind of open their eyes and they look in the distance and they start talking to people, okay? And if you're at the bedside, you're like, you talking to me? No? Okay? You're looking back, you're kind of looking back. What's going on? Am I missing out? Am I missing out, you know? And you see that, and then if you ask patients, you know, who are you talking to? They're quite coherent. And they are very clear, and they can tell you, oh, you don't see grandpa, or you don't see, mom, you don't see mommy, these type of things. And often these visitations or visions, some in the medical world it's documented as, what do we call them, deathbed visions, are loved ones. And they tend to be very reassuring and very love-induced and very, create a sense of peace and calmness. And it's interesting too, because even people who are not very somnolent or lethargic, they can be very coherent, and they're talking to people. And I remember one patient I had, the daughter to her mother, the daughter kept saying, "Mom, what are you doing? That's so weird. Why are you doing that?" And the mom kept being like, "Sure, honey." Just kind of disregarding her. Like, I'm over here, I'm talking to my husband who passed away previously. So they tend to be people who have previously passed away and are deceased and seem to be welcoming. And they can be single people, sometimes there's crowds. There's lots of documentation on this if any of you are interested. But I do think it's important if dying people and families can be reassured that their experiences are perfectly normal for this stage of life. It can decrease some anxiety about this, and it can also kind of shift it into being reassuring and comforting. And then one other thing about observations of death, which I feel it's more than just a physical event. It's more than just a physical event, is right before many people die, they have kind of an energetic surge or an increase of energy. In the medical world, we call it terminal lucidity, okay? But it's kind of just this like lucid, energetic interval that occurs, and it can happen to people who are unresponsive, and suddenly they show a marked improvement, conversing like they didn't before, sometimes they even ask for food or drink. And they appear to be their old selves, and families feel that, maybe a miraculous happening has occurred and things are changing, only to see that the next day or that evening their loved ones pass. My husband, when his grandma was passing, Dada, called her Dada. Dada had a terminal lucidity or energetic interval. She was kind of sleeping mostly, very quiet, and then she just suddenly woke up and said, "I want some yogurt." And she got out of bed and walked and sat at the table and had yogurt with everybody, and said to my husband, "So you're going to be a papa," because I was pregnant at the time. "So you're going to be a papa." And then, went back to bed. Then I think the next day or evening she passed away. So she truly had an experience of this. So I think if families can be aware of that, that's very helpful as well. On a total side note, I think lucid energetic interval would be an incredible band name. If anybody needs a band name, Ned, I see you. Yeah, so. And just another reason, too, why I feel like death is more than a physical event is there's something, if you have been in the room with someone who is dying, there's something about when you enter the room. It is incredibly profound. There's something about the room that is different. There is an energy that is different. It is sacred. It is spiritual. It is real. It is there. And I can't really explain that except to try to share it. And if any of you have been with someone dying, you know what I'm talking about. So it can't be denied, but it's something very profound. And those are just some of the things that, to me, it just shows that death is more than just a physical event. There are things that are unusual and mysterious that happen around universally to many people. And if we can be familiar with them, they can maybe not seem so scary. And they can be used as something reassuring and tools. And we can be there for ourselves and loved ones. So. Okay, so the other thing is that death is an individual and personal journey. So in my experience, not one death has been the same. Not one death has been the same. And each death is as unique as life. Whether it's the way the patient was with their family or with themselves, or the way the patient looked at others or looked at themselves, or specific emotions in the room, or stages of the process, or even just their name, It's just each death is so different. And really it's an accumulation of the individual's life and then the experiences and emotions of the family and caregivers and loved ones at the bedside. Other ways it's different is some people really want to die alone, and some people want to die with others. Some withdrawn to consciousness, fall to sleep and die quickly. Some people fall into consciousness, sleep many days, and die. Most people, when they stop eating or drinking, die within 5 to 7 days. And some people, I've seen just be like, wow, it's 2.5 weeks now since there's been any food or drink, and they're still living. So we really just don't know, and it's a very common question family members ask. When are they going to die? When do you think they'll die? And the answer always is, we have no idea. We don't know, but we're gonna be here to support the entire time. Because we really don't know, because death is an individual and personal journey. What is hard to put aside, though, and hard to dismiss is the remarkable moments of patience as death approaches, what seems to be their conscious way and choice of dying. I have seen some patients hold on until relatives are traveling from around the world to arrive, and then they get there and they die. And I've seen some patients hold on until their entire family leaves, and then they die. And one story I have about that involves a woman, and she was dying. She was 88 years old. And I used to work hospice on Sunday nights from 4 p.m. until midnight. And so on Fridays, when I'd be done teaching, I would look at the electronic health record and just see the census, who was on, and see who might be there on Sunday. And I remember looking up this woman on Friday, looking up her case and everything, and thought, okay, she will have passed by Sunday. And when I got to work, at 4 p.m. on Sunday, I saw she was still alive. So I called the family. I said, would you like a nurse visit? They said, yes, absolutely. So I go over to the house, knock on the door. The granddaughter answers, and I proceed to walk into the home and see the most amazing family. There were probably about 30 of them, and they were all ages. There were like babies crawling. There were like, elders. Everyone was there. And when I went into the room of the woman who was dying, there were about 25 people in the room. There were definitely people playing cards. There was a guitar. There was, I don't even know. I just remember seeing a lot of activity, and even just being like, where's the patient, And then I saw the woman over there, and I said, oh, wow, the family's here. This is so lovely. Wow. And I went over to the patient. I did my physical assessment, did all the nursing stuff. And after that, I kind of sat in the corner and talked to the granddaughter, who was a durable power of attorney. Very important for us all to have one. And some other family members kind of gathered, about 8 people, and I just started talking about what you'll see with death, how the body changes, what we can do, talk to the patients. Hearing is often the last thing to go. And one of the things I just mentioned was, and sometimes people like to die alone. So, if she is alone and she dies, that's her journey and her choice. We don't need to have this unnecessary guilt about not being there and an expectation. And then they kind of said, well, should we leave her alone? And I go, well, I'm not saying anything, right? Okay. I'm just, explaining about some things. And then we talked about another 20 minutes, and then I left the house. And sure enough, I think I was driving maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and I got a phone call from this granddaughter, the same granddaughter, and she goes, Barbara, we kind of just talked about what you said, and we gave Grandma a picture of Grandpa, and then we all left the room, and she died. And I was like, wow, okay, and so, I was like, wow, this is so profound, thank you. And so, I returned back to the house to do a death visit. There's legal things we need to do, confirm death, these type of things. And also we call the mortuary. And I just want to say, the gentlemen from the mortuary that show up are always so well dressed. They usually have a 3-piece suit and a fedora, and I just feel like they're these underappreciated people who really class up death. Just whenever I see them, I just want to say thank you so much for being here, And then it's interesting too, because now I know the mortuary guys. I'm like, this is an interesting line of work when you know the mortuary guys. But and while I was waiting, I looked around the house and I saw that the woman who passed away, she had over 2,000 bells. 2,000 bells. She collected bells, little hand bells. And the family was just so sweet and so kind. And they said, would you like a bell? And I said, really? And they said, yeah, do you want a bell? And usually in hospice, we don't accept food or drinks or anything, but I said, yeah, I think I want a bell, please, yeah. And they said, go ahead, pick out, whatever. So I'm just waiting for the mortuary, supporting the family, and got to cruise this whole bell collection. And I was very, very fortunate in that I got to pick this bell. And it's right here, and I have it in the home. And it's very special to me, right here. And it's surprising to me that I picked this pattern out. This is not the usual style I enjoy. And I realized, to me, it was just kind of an unconscious thing that I picked this out. But to me, I think this is very much a grandmother type of pattern, right? A very type of maternal thing. So it was just very interesting that it seems to me that often dying have the ability, at times, not always, to choose the actual moment of dying. And it's not so uncommon for people to die when loved ones leave the room, even for the briefest of times. And if some people who are dying find it easier to let go when others are not there, it's important for us to understand that so we don't have unnecessary guilt about the circumstances. So just thought that was nice. So if anybody wants to borrow the bell, you can. Okay. Okay, so that was just some unusual things I've noticed, picked up on the job, okay? Kind of some unusual, things that they don't really tell you in the textbooks when you sign up for a line of work like this. So now I thought maybe we could move into how to talk with someone who is dying. After this, we're gonna move into how to be with someone who's dying. But I can say the most important thing of how to talk with someone who's dying is do not withdraw. Do not withdraw. Be involved, be present, and be loving. Try not to pull away from them or isolate them because they're dying. Visit them, call them, write them letters, emails, whatever your choice of communication modality is, but let them choose when they want to be alone or with others, but let it be a choice and not forced isolation, right? Let it be a choice. And when you're with them, if they want to talk about dying, great, then talk about dying. And if they don't want to talk about dying, don't talk about dying. You don't have to force them to do that, okay? You can be present, you can sit, you can listen. Ideally, it's nice to not fill the room with idle chatter, okay? Kind of just try to meet them where they're at. Usually, in my experience, the person who is dying, they know they're dying, okay? They know they're dying, and the secret is for us to not be afraid of it or run away from it, okay? This is what's happening. And in general, what happens, again, I'm totally generalizing with patients, when they first get their diagnosis, there's extreme fear, extreme sadness and mourning and a lot of emotions. And then there's so much an arc of a transition with time, with experience, with exposure, with conversations, or whatever it is. But in this arc somewhere, in this period, there's a transition from being completely fear-filled to just having a decrease in fear, a little more resignation and awareness of the death, and a little bit more peace there. So we really don't know where people are in the arc. So it's just important to kind of ask where they are. But in my experience, most patients, generalizing of course, do kind of make this arc that they transition between kind of the fear of death and somewhat making a peace of death, and some even going into transitioning into an empowered death. And that is a really incredible experience when there is an empowered death. But especially when someone has come to acceptance with dying, we can try to be there for them wherever they are. For really, what is more lonely? Like, what is more lonely than knowing you're dying and accepting it within you, but everyone around you doesn't want to talk about it? Or no one will be honest with you about it, okay? That sounds very isolating and lonely to me. Some may feel that if you talk to your loved one and discuss their death, that means all hope is lost. Or some may feel, that in wishing to protect your loved one, you just avoid talking about death altogether. Or let me just take their mind off it. Let me just get cheerful matters. And it's a normal thing to feel that way. It's a knee-jerk reaction. It's a reflex. It's really easy to give false reassurances. It's not going to be like that. Everything's fine. It's not like that. I remember one patient I had, she kept saying, I think I'm going to die tonight, so I want to say my goodbyes. And the daughter kept saying, Mom, I'm going to see you tomorrow. I'm going to see you tomorrow, Mom. It's this really interesting kind of the disconnect there, and it's natural to feel that way. But I think in general, when being with dying people, admitting that you don't know what to say is more valued than some cliched comment offering hope or some kind of false promise, okay? People aren't looking for you to make it right or for take it away. People are just really looking for you to be authentically you and listen. So it's easy to let our discomforts get in the way. It's really easy to do that. And sometimes we just withdraw because we don't even know what to do, or we don't know what to say, and we feel helpless, and sometimes in reflexively turning away, we inadvertently isolate our loved ones, and they need our presence, and we miss out on these like really precious opportunities. So, hopefully talking about death, getting some exposure to death, talking about these things can kind of decrease the just create space between the stimulus and the response, okay? Because often we have the stimulus and just a reflex. But by talking about it, hopefully there's a stimulus and there's space to create our action, our reaction to it. Let's see, is there anything else good on this slide? Meet them where they're at. If it's okay with them, engage questions. Okay. The story that kind of really sticks out to me about this is I had a patient, Jack. He's really special to me. He was a 67-year-old man. He was a woodworker. I'm not even quite sure what that means, but I think he did like designs with wood. And he was kind of a bit of a curmudgeon. Like he wasn't like, he was a no fluff, no frill guy. He wasn't the guy that you walked in and you're like, hey, Jack. You're like, oh, hey, what's going on, Jack? That kind of thing. And, he was kind of prone to ill temper. You're just kind of saying it. And at times, sometimes he would kind of be ill-tempered, especially with his wife. And he was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer with metastases to the spine. And if you don't know what that means, it means the cancer has spread to other parts of the body. It's very common for it to spread into the spine. And it can be very painful with a lot of symptoms. A lot of pain and coughing and a lot of burdens. I was noticing it was difficult to have conversations with Jack. It was difficult to talk about death with him. I couldn't really quite find an in, very closed. And he wasn't into hearing about the dying process. He wasn't into talking about it. He just wasn't in the place where that could be discussed. And often when we talk to patients, we want to be direct. We want to ask questions as like, how do you imagine spending the last days of your life, weeks or months? Is there anything you would like to occur before you die? How would you like the room to be when you die? We ask questions like that to really see how they feel and what they want. And I do remember one small breakthrough came with Jack one time where I was in the room and they were very cluttery. It's interesting, you go into people's homes and you see how a lot of people live. And it made me feel better because I'm kind of messy, but I was like, oh, they're really cluttery. And I noticed in the corner there were some wood balls that were designed for juggling specifically because they were kind of uniformed and weighted evenly. And I said, Jack, are those juggling balls? Did you make those? And he was like, yeah, I used to juggle, blah, blah, blah. I was like, Jack, I am learning how to juggle right now. I really am, and it's so hard. And he kind of just looked at me, and I was like, and then I'm trying to do this, and I started speaking juggling speak, and he just kind of went, and he's like, next time you come, bring your balls. And I was like, oh my God, okay, So I did. I brought my juggling balls. And it was very interesting because I never thought hospice nursing would facilitate juggling lessons, but it did. And it was interesting, but that was very short-lived because Jack wasn't a very patient teacher, okay? And I was like, oh, I'm not into this, okay? But it was nice. It was kind of a breakthrough for us a little bit. However, though, the most profound conversation I had with him was one time we were alone. He and I were kind of finally alone, and his caregivers were out of the room, and his wife was out of the room. And I sat down with him, and I just kind of looked at him, and I said, okay, how are you doing? How's it going? And he looked at me very calmly, and actually he was a little short of breath. I remember he was short of breath. He was on oxygen. We had just moved him, so he was like short of breath after exertion. We repositioned him. And he looked at me and he said, don't tell my wife, but I'm dying. And I said, okay. And we had a conversation. And then later, I was walking to my car after the visit, and his wife escorted me to the car, and I said, how are you doing? Just kind of asked her, how are you doing? And she said to me, don't tell Jack, but he's dying. And it was a kind of a really profound moment for me, and it was very stunning, and it struck me how alone they both must feel right now, and to understand how people can be with each other every day in every moment. She was a primary caregiver and so close in proximity and so in love with each other, right? But still not have the words or the means to talk to each other, okay? So after this was realized the hospice team, and not sure if you're familiarized, but the hospice team, there's a physician, a nurse, chaplain, social worker, a health aide, and everything. We were able to facilitate a conversation. We were able to get them to communicate and talk, and it was such an honor to do so and find the words for them in whatever way it was for them to communicate meaningfully, and most importantly, find out Jack's dying wishes and honor those. So that was really powerful for me. So meeting them where they're at, like I said, most people know they're dying. And this doesn't mean they always want to talk about it. Remember, take the cue from them. But generally, the best way to start a conversation is, how are you feeling? How are you feeling? And they'll take it from there. They'll take the lead. I would say if someone tells you they're scared or fearful or frightened, it's important to follow up with that question. What is it that you're scared about? And it's surprising to me how many people are not scared of dying. What they are most oftenly scared about is their loved ones who will remain when they have died. It is just so common to me. I don't know what my adult son will do. I don't know what my husband will do. I don't know. And often, so it's important to find out what their fear is, so that can be discussed and talked about. If some people are afraid of dying in pain, we can talk about that, ways to alleviate that, ways to intervene, ways to decrease symptom burden. So I would say if you're open to that and they're open to that, follow up with their questions and their answers. I definitely never say, I know how you feel, because there is no way I could know how they feel. Okay, there's no way. But we can say, I don't know how you feel, but I would love to listen to how you feel right now. Or I don't know how you feel, but I would love to understand how you feel. Would you be open to talking about that? It's fine to tell someone you love them. It's fine to tell them that you miss them. It's fine to cry with them. It's okay to be direct. It's okay to be truthful, and believe it or not, you can do all those things while sustaining spirit and being supportive. Another cool thing is if you're close to them, you can ask them, is there anything I can do for us to remember you by? Can I make a video? Can I put a video collage for you? Can we discuss our shared history and all these things? What is it that I can do for you, in ways that I can remember you? If they're open to talking about death, I love the following questions. How would you like to die? How would you like the environment to be when you die? How can I help provide this for you? Is there anything you would like to occur before you die? Is there a plan for any of your family members or children? And in the question, is there anything you would like to occur before you die? I want to talk about a patient named Vernon McAllister. And Vernon McAllister, he's from South Carolina. He was 93 years old, and he was a man on his way to death. And when asked if there was anything he would like to occur before he died, he replied to the hospice nurses, yes, I would like to renew my wedding vows to my wife of 72 years. 72 years, are you kidding me? Oh my gosh, I hope to live to 72. So he said, can you keep me alive until then? And the nurses and physicians said, we will do our best. And indeed, they were able to. So here is Vernon and Sue. And I just think she looks so pretty. Okay, and they're renewing their vows here. But perhaps if this question wasn't directly asked to Vernon, it's not quite sure if maybe this would even have been a possibility for him to think of that, yeah? So commonly, too, when we talk about, is there a plan for the children or a plan for the family, commonly families ask me, what should we do with the children? Should we let them know? Should they come to the funeral? These type of things. And here's where I first would just like to say, I am not a trained professional. I am not a child psychologist. And, for me, there's no one way. There's no right way. There's no consistent answer. I do think getting professional trained help in this area to make an informed decision is very important. And I do think if the child is old enough to ask them, okay, ask them, do you want to be part of this or not? At a certain age, they can make decisions. And in general, I do believe it's important to make people feel part of the family. So I actually have my own experience as a child with death. And this is my brother, Paul. And that's me. And I was 8 when Paul passed away from a motorcycle accident. And Paul was 23? How old was Paul? He was 23. My brother was 23. And I remember thinking as an 8-year-old, oh, he was so old. He lived a long life. Okay, yeah. But now I know that 23 is so young, right? 23 is so young. And like I said, my brother passed away in a motorcycle accident. It was very sudden. It was very shocking and hurtful for my family. And I am very grateful now. In giving this lecture, I realize how grateful I am to my parents for letting me go to the funeral. So I want to thank you. I've never thanked you for that. I didn't even know. Thank you. What I remember? I remember walking up the aisle of church. I remember not knowing whether to smile at people, because I remember seeing people and wanting to be like, Suzanne, and then I'd be like, oh, I'm at a funeral. Wait, Paul died. I don't think I should be smiling. I remember these feelings. I remember seeing my mom cry on the floor. That was a new thing. I remember going with my mom's best friend, Emmy, to get a new dress for the funeral, and it was blue with ruffles, okay? And I also remember that after the funeral, my brother would always come to the back door and ring that doorbell. And it was a special type of ring. The back door had 1 ring, and the front door had 2 rings, I think. And he would always come there. And I remember when that doorbell would ring, I would think, oh, maybe they made a mistake, and maybe Paul didn't die. And I would run to the door hoping he was there, But I was thinking, if I didn't go to the funeral, I don't know if I would have had a grieving process. I don't know if I would have had an ability to experience what loss is and see what that is like in a culture and what a funeral is like. So it was kind of an interesting reflection for me to think about this. And there's another article that addresses this question, and I just want to say that this is going to be very, very touching for a lot of people and can be very emotional. But this is another person's experience with involving his child in death. And there's a LA Dodger. Do you guys know Rich Hill? Some of you Dodger fans? Okay. So Rich Hill, professional Major League Baseball player. He's a pitcher? Pitcher? Okay, great. All of my baseball people. Thank you. Okay, great. Okay. Go Dodgers. Okay. Okay. And actually, I want to thank my friend Jason Bowers for helping me with this. He's a varsity baseball coach in Santa Monica. And he introduced this article to me, and we've talked about it quite a few times. So Rich Hill, he's a pitcher for the Dodgers, and he wrote an eloquent story. It is so well written. If you guys want to read an article and not waste your time, it's this one, okay? It is so well written, and the title of it is called I want to talk about my son, Brooks. And basically, his son, a newborn, was born with a serious medical condition and a brain malformation. Rich Hill, he discusses about taking his 6-week-old son, month and a half. He talks about taking a 6-week-old son home from the NICU, which is the neonatal intensive care unit, an ICU for neonates, for little babies. Taking his 6-week-old son home from the NICU on hospice to die at home, okay? After it was determined no medical interventions could work anymore, nothing could be effective, okay? And here he is on the left. This is from the playerstribune.com, and this picture is courtesy of the Hill family. And on the right, you can see is his son Brooks and his other son Bryce, okay? So in what I'm about to read, there's Brooks, who is the sweet little baby there, and then there is Bryce, who is holding Brooks, okay? And so this is what Rich Hill wrote. He says, when your newborn child is going to pass away, there are all sorts of questions you need to ask. Questions you never thought about before and never figured you'd ever need to be asking. There are a bunch of them, and they're all terrible. But I think by far the worst one is, how exactly is our baby going to die? It just seems so inhumane in every way, but at the same time, we really had no idea how it was all going to work. And it was being left unclear because, like, how do you even ask that question? How do you even make those words come out of your mouth? I mean, I didn't even know how to say it out loud to Caitlin, my wife. I struggled with it. She struggled with it. We just struggled. The other difficult question for us was whether we should try to shield Brooke's passing from Bryce, my son, my other son, not expose him to what was happening or whatever. And as we were wrestling with that one, we had a long talk with our hospice doctor about it, and something she said to us really hit home. Do you guys want Bryce to feel like he is part of your family, she asked? Or do you want to make it so this big thing that happened in Bryce's life will be something he wasn't any part of? And that was all we needed to hear. It was like, no, Bryce is a huge part of this family. He needs to be part of this with us. And so we took Brooks home to be a family together, all of us as one. Okay, so why are we talking about this story? Why did I bring up such a difficult story, and what's the message here, right? What is the message here? What's the point? And the point is a few things, right? Sometimes, not always, but sometimes when we try to protect our loved ones from the pain, we also prevent them from participating in life and being a part of the family. And in trying to shield them from the difficulties of life, we end up not having them process grief and life, and opportunities for support can be missed. And maybe too, perhaps the only way to process the most difficult, painful parts of life is to go through it together in a loving and supportive way for each other. We don't have to go through it alone, and we can be here for each other, and we can be inclusive. It's not always a happy ending, but the Hill family, they really went through it, and they were as present and as genuine as they could be, giving themselves permission to feel and do whatever felt true for them without hiding any of it. And I think that's the best any of us can ever do. We can just try to be as genuine and as present and as inclusive as we can in each moment. So if any of you are interested in reading a very worthwhile article, it's written so well too. It's written so well. Okay, shall we take a deep breath? Let's all take a deep breath. Good job. So I'm going to move to a new point. You guys okay with that? Okay. So we talked about how to talk about death with someone, but now let's talk about how to be with someone who's imminently dying. Okay, imminently meaning that death is approaching, it's very near. So my husband and I were talking. My husband is a amazing person. He is a board-certified emergency room doc who, after doing that for a long time, felt a compassion and a pull to start working in palliative care. Most people have no clue what that is too, and that's okay. But that's to try to help people with symptom burdens and disease, and then move into hospice as well. So it's weird. We both have like ER and hospice. I mean, I guess we're meant to be together for a lot of reasons. But so we were talking that lots of times, actually, when you enter the room in the hospital, and sometimes in the home too, when someone is dying, the room often tends to look like this sometimes. And what do you guys notice about this scene? Often when we walk in, the chairs are to the side of the wall, and no one is around the person that is dying. But everybody's in the room. Everybody's in the room, you know. But the chairs are at the side of the wall, and people are sitting at the side. Family and friends are there, but the chairs are far away. And this is somewhat of an unknown fear and trepidation that occurs. There's something about the dying process and death process that makes us forget that this is our loved one. That says this is our loved one here, okay, and through that. So what I would like to suggest, if people are open to that, is to not withdraw again, be involved and be present, talk to them, because hearing is often the last sense to go. Provide a calm, supportive environment, and it's more about being and not doing. So, you know, remembering that this is our loved one, okay, and that this being, this person, this being, is deserving of respect and kindness. Okay, just remembering they're a loved one can be crucial. And it's important to be present, be engaged, create a calm and loving, supportive environment. You can sit by them, you can hold their hand. If you think they wanted music, you can play music. Please play what they want to hear, not you want to hear, okay? You can say kind words. You can moisten the mouth. Many people, as they're dying, their mouth is open, so the mouth can get very dry. You can position them comfortably. I mean, you can really lead with love and compassion. And touch can be so important too. You can touch them. You can be sensitive about how close sitting with them and how much company they may want. This is why it's important to talk to people about what they might want. People vary widely on that. Some people don't want to be touched. Some people are like, yeah, play with my hair, you know. So you want to just clue in to the physical and verbal signs. Also, it's really important here to honor any faith-based traditions, okay? You know, religion gives a viewpoint on death, and it's a cornerstone on death. So if people would find certain religious aspects at the bedside when they're dying, we want to honor that. Anything that is going to bring comfort to them. But mostly, sitting and being present is often more about less doing and more being. Does that make sense? Less doing and just more being. Like I said, often hearing is the last thing to go, so you can reassure the patient that it's okay to die, that you'll be okay, say nice things. I remember one time I was at the bedside of a man, he was passing, and he had 3 daughters, and I guess he was kind of a ladies' man. He liked to date, I don't know. And the caregiver was a woman, and I was a woman, and his 3 daughters were there, and his daughters just kept saying, "Look, Dad, you're surrounded by all these women." And they're like, "We know you would love it this way." And it was very sweet. They were saying really nice things that he would want to hear. It was just so sweet, I thought, of them. So, yeah. I also say that, if you're uncomfortable saying anything, just sitting there and being present is enough. That's it, just being present. Being with a dying loved one, it can facilitate a lot of things to be seen and heard that otherwise not be experienced. And being with a dying loved one, or anyone dying actually, has a great potential to be transformative and can teach us a lot of huge lessons. So a couple Fridays ago, I lecture Friday mornings, and I was talking with some nursing students in the lecture, and somebody said, "Congratulations, Sammy, I think you did. Thank you so much. It was very nice." And nursing students, were so nice. And then again, I said, "This is all your guys' fault." And I said, "You need to help me," and these type of things. And I mentioned to them that I was considering talking about death and dying, and that if anyone had any input, talk to me after class or just email me or something like that. And because nursing students are so engaged and, kind, really, I got a flood of emails, which was really surprising to me. And I took Friday night that night to read them, and I read a lot of stories, beautiful stories about people, these nursing students, sharing their experience of being with a dying loved one and the compelling reasons of why I needed to talk about death and dying. And in fact, one student even laid out my lecture for me. She's like, "You could do this, and then you could do this." And I was like really appreciative of that. I was like, "Wow, thank you. God, it's great, Mm-hmm. So, one student shared her story, and it was so powerful to me that I wrote her back and I said, "How would you feel if I shared this story? Would you be okay with that?" And it was like a really quick reply, like, "Absolutely, whatever you want." I was like, wow. And so I want to share a beautiful excerpt from a nursing student that she sent me. And she says, "My first true experience with death and dying and being at the bedside was with my dad, who passed away from lung cancer in 2013. It was definitely a learning experience, and had I learned some things earlier, I believe I would have approached the situation differently. Even as his own daughter, I realized that I was being somewhat distant and hesitant to talk to him, normally or physically touching him. Now, I come from a family that hugs and kisses to each other occur whenever they leave the home or get home, albeit even if it's just a grocery store run. Yet here I was, tentative to do as little as place a hand on my dad's arm. And I think my initial disconnect stemmed from fear. But one of his nurses gave me some wise advice. Agatha told me in her relatable demeanor and unforgettable Nigerian accent, you be strong, you stand next to him, you sit with him, you touch him, and you make him know you are here with him. And something clicked, and the fear went away because that was my dad. Regardless of his condition, the man who made every softball practice, every softball game, and did everything and anything to support his family. So with this, I would like to honor Trisha for writing that to me. And yeah, right? Absolutely. Yeah. And this is Antonio Agabao. And here are photos of him with his daughter, Trisha, who's currently a master's entry clinical nursing student. And you can see, I can see he was at your softball games, right? Oh, yeah. And Trisha, I just know your father is so proud of you. I just know he's so proud of you. So thank you for sharing. Okay, so let's flip the switch a little bit and flip the script. So we've talked about death. We've talked about how when we know it's happening, right? Okay. We talked about, some observations, how it's more than a physical event, how it's a personal and individual journey. We talked about how to talk to people who are dying and how to be with people who are dying. But, just wondering, is there anything that death could teach us about living? Okay. Is there anything there of value to talk about? If we can't avoid death, can we change how we relate to it? What is there to learn from it? Is it possible to come to terms with death in a way that enriches our lives? What can we do? So in reflecting of that, I definitely feel like it can, reflecting of death, being with death, being around dying, it gives a power of presence, an appreciation of impermanence in the present moment. It can teach us not to waste time. It can teach us now is the time. And then there's something I'm going to talk about a little bit later called Yay, We're Alive. So, if change is happening all the time, and we know this, yet sometimes we don't fully relate to impermanence, kind of think, oh, not me. And it's hard to remember that even though the human body is so resilient, the human body is so amazing and so resilient, yet life is so fragile. There's a great quote by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and she says, it's only when we truly know and understand that we have limited time on earth and that we have no way of knowing when our time is up that we begin to live each day to the fullest as if it was the only one we had. Interesting. It kind of seems like by becoming deeply aware of our mortality of others, mortality of life, of all living beings, there's a great potential for intensifying our everyday life and moving into deliberate living and, focusing on what we truly value and valuing our own life and the life of others. It does seem like people who are truly contemplating their death have the most fulfilling life. It does seem like that in observation. Whether they participate in analytical death meditations or they've been around a loved one who's dying or they are dying themselves, people who have contemplated death seem to live fully and come to some place of peace with death and peace of life. There's a great Steve Jobs quote. What did he say? Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life. Because almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important. A patient I did have who was fighting cancer for some time He was placed on hospice in an assisted living facility, so he was not at home. He was in a facility that helped care for him. And he was a man in his 50s. He was originally from Samoa, and his name was Joseph. And when I would visit him, I would always find him in his wheelchair, out of his room, and in the recreation room or the dining hall or around people. And he was very content, just hanging out, watching, listening, and observing to everyone. And it was interesting, he seemed content and not bitter, even though he was fully aware of his declining status, his terminal diagnosis, and his approaching death and decline. And each time I would visit him, I'd always say, "Joseph, how are you doing today?" And I'll never forget his response all the time was, "I'm just happy to be here. I'm just happy to be here." And it struck me, the way he said it was so authentic, and the way he said it every time I visited, you know? And it was genuine. It was simple as that. It was simple and profound. I'm just happy to be here. Just so appreciative for every day he was alive. Later, Joseph also told me some wise advice. He said, "Make sure you use a lot more in your life, 'I love you.'" I said, "Oh, Joseph, can you tell me more about that?" "Yeah, make sure you use 'I love you' a lot more in your life than you do right now. Use 'I love you' a lot more in your life, because tomorrow you don't know if you're going to be able to use 'I love you.' You know, you may not be able to." And the point really resonated me. It was very profound. You know, I've seen also some dying folks and their families, they just want each other to know how much they love each other. And sometimes I've seen that it's almost like they're trying to make up for the times they didn't tell each other, "I love you." You know, they're trying to make up for lost time. So, you know, I think taking Joseph's advice, say "I love you" to the ones you love, because we don't know what the future holds, basically, is really profound. And ultimately, life is fleeting, right? But it's so precious. And it's the appreciation of the preciousness and the fleetingness that makes us grow and live fully, right? Live a full life. And in appreciating this preciousness, there's a great potential to also foster an appreciation of love. And it's a love of life, precious human life, right? Every moment, every day, every hurt, every peak, every valley, every storm, every sunshine, you know, everything, okay? It's just this like precious, precious life. And appreciating this precious life, we can live fully for ourselves, live fully for others, and help others live fully, right? Help others live fully. So we can take advantages of opportunities. We can be brave when we feel fear, like this right now. We can utilize our talents for self and others. We can be filled with gratitude. We have this incredible opportunity. I liked this quote by Irma Bombeck. She's kind of sassy, right? She says, "When I stand before God at the end of my life, I would hope that I would not have a single bit of talent left and could say, 'I used everything you gave me.'" You know, so dramatic, right? Okay? But, you know, it says something. I gave it all. This is what you got. Now let me be, right? Okay. So it's interesting because my husband and I, in a strange way, really reflect on our mortality quite a bit. And yeah, maybe another reason why we're together, okay? And we talk about these things. We talk about, you know, we could die. We could die right now. We could die tomorrow, we could blah, 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 blah. And then one day we kind of said, well, maybe we should flip that switch. And instead of thinking, well, we could die tonight in our sleep, maybe we should wake up in the morning and say, yay, we're alive, okay? So we started to say this, yay, we're alive, to each other. And, you know, we would wake up in the morning together and we say, oh, hi, honey, yay, we're alive, yay, we're alive. And yay, we're alive, right? Okay. And, you know, even when we are really tired, and we are like super tired right now because we have a 10-month-old, and sometimes the yay, we're alive is even like, yay, we're alive. Okay, you know, but, or like, I'll get a bottle, yay, we're alive, you know, these type of things. But it's really incredible to me how it has hung true for us. And, you know, when we got married, we had an awesome wedding. We had 3 weddings. That's how it's another good man. Okay, but when we did get married, we actually shared this with everybody at our wedding ceremony. We actually shared this practice of yay, we're alive with our friends and loved ones who attended our our wedding. And we shared with them, this is something so powerful for us, and we wanted to share it as a couple. And if you are interested in, having Yay, We're Alive in your life, that would be awesome. Let's all, Yay, We're Alive together. And something very interesting happened after our wedding. So it kind of started with these text messages I started to get from people. Yay, we're alive. Yay, we're alive. And all of a sudden, it started coming from many people everywhere. And I thought at first it was just like, oh, yeah, your wedding. No, it really started becoming consistent. Yay, we're alive. Yay, 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 we're alive, alive. Yay, we are totally alive, okay? Over to, here's me wishing somebody a happy birthday. Yay, we're alive and older. That's the response I now get, To my one friend leads backpacking trips, and she said, on the trail, I kept hearing myself say, yay, we're alive, all throughout the trail. So, and then eventually it got, oh, this was a great one. Yay, we're alive. I think of you every morning I take my vitamins. and then it started just becoming like, it actually went to this, YWA. It got a YWA. And then it started becoming almost business. YWA, what time are we meeting tonight? Da 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 da. Or that's really cool. Blah 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 blah. YWA. And so it was like just so cool, and it still is there and still sticks, and it just really resonates with me, this YWA. And then it moved, you can do it in the office. Yay, we're alive. And this is my friend Missy Cashman. She's a news anchor in Montana. So apparently Montana is yaying we're alive as well. You can do it at home. You can do it around the world. This is my friend from London, and he said he bikes by this every day. Because you are alive, everything is possible. And he said he thinks of Coda and I all the time and reflects on, yay, we're alive. This is from New York City. I think the Empire State Building. Very New York. Don't have time to put myself in it. Here's a note, right? Okay. This is from Italy. This is from Japan, my friend with her grandma. This is in Russian. These cuties are so cute, right? They really look like they're embodying yay, we're alive. Like father, like son. And kids and family, too, just embodying this, yay, we're alive. Yeah. This is at the Dodger game, right there on the bottom right. This is a close family to me and all their kids in their own way doing yay, I'm alive. In the hospital, a great time to practice. From the hospital, yay, we're alive. At Superior Court, I have a great friend. She's a public defender, yeah. And with your animals, yay, we're alive, yeah, dude, yeah, right? With yourself, it's a great way to do yay, we're alive, perfect time. And with a loved one, yay, we're alive. And outdoors. Lots of come on, man, it's amazing people. Yeah. So how honored are we to have such amazing friends and family that have continued this yay, we're alive, right? This precious human appreciation of life. So, my question to you is, if you're open to it, how can you include yay, we're alive in your life as a way to really honor the precious human life, okay? And if you don't mind, I'm sorry, I'm just definitely gonna do lecture format right now. Can you please turn to your neighbor and share what you think you might do? Like what that would look like in your life. If you were to do yay, we're alive in your life, what would that look like? Like for your partner, your husband, like maybe we could wake up, maybe I'll write you a note on the coffee pot, or something like that. But if you adopt yay, we're alive in your life, what would that look like for you? So just take a minute, talk amongst your neighbors. I do want to say that this next quote, as a nurse who works with dying people, as a sister who lost her brother in a motorcycle accident, as a person who has contemplated death herself, this next quote resonates very deeply with me. And it's every day, think as you wake up, today I am fortunate to be alive. I have a precious human life, and I'm not going to waste it. I'm going to use all my energies to develop myself, to expand my heart out to others. I'm going to have kind thoughts towards others. I'm not going to get angry or think badly of others, and I'm going to benefit others as much as I can for this precious human life, for this precious human life. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to say, yay, we're alive. And thank you very much for coming here and spending time in this precious human life.
On behalf of the Alumni Scholars Club and the UCLA Alumni Association, I would like to present Professor Barbara Demman as the 2019 recipient of the Marty Scholars My Last Lecture.
Thank you. Thank you, Will. Thank you. Thank you.